Today I'm going to be answering one of your art questions about the differences between cold press, hot press, and rough watercolor papers. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Deborah writes, "Hi Lisa, I saw a couple of your videos where you airbrushed the background. I noticed you use 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. I recently bought 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. What is the difference between hot and cold press? Is there a reason to use hot press instead of cold press when using the airbrush for a background for a colored pencil drawing? Thanks." When you're shopping for watercolor paper, it's going to usually come in 3 different textures. You're going to have rough, cold press, and hot press. And it ranges from rough being the roughest, cold press somewhere in between, and hot press has the smoothest tooth. Now with rough paper, it's really easy to see in this sample. When I've taken the colored pencil over it, you can see how the colored pencil hits the top. Look at all those little hills and valleys. There's so many white gaps, large white gaps. It's kind of like painting on your wall in your home where you've got that textured feeling to it. It's not very smooth at all. This is going to be used by some watercolor artists. Wet media like that tends to work the best with this because if you're trying to draw, your pencil is going to be skipping over areas where the paper indents a lot. Definitely not an ideal choice for most colored pencil artists, or with airbrush in that case, it's going to be the same thing. The airbrush is going to have to fight to get into all of those little nooks and crannies. It's not that it can't be done, it's that it's not going to give you that nice, soft, very detailed look that you can get with an airbrush. This definitely limits what that airbrush can do. Moving on to cold press. Cold press is right in the middle of hot press and rough. It's got more texture than most colored pencil artists will use. It's ideal for watercolor artists. A lot of watercolor artists love cold press. It works beautifully with that. But as far as colored pencil and airbrush, still not going to be my go-to paper. It's too rough. I'm going to have to fight too much to try to get the pencil or the airbrush paint into all those little nooks and crannies. I want to have nice, soft, even coverage, and this paper is just too rough for my taste. You will pretty much never see me use colored pencil on rough or cold press paper. It's just not ideal. Same with the airbrush, not the ideal surface. And then hot press is going to be the smoothest of the 3. You still have that nice thick paper. It handles wet media very well. So with airbrushing, with watercolor, it works fine on. It works fine for Inktense. You see me use that all the time. Any wet media works very, very well because it is that thicker watercolor paper, but it's very smooth. So it's really easy to get the fine detail when I'm working in colored pencil. I'm not going to be struggling to fill in all those little white spots, those nooks and crannies. Especially in this case, I would go over it with odorless mineral spirits and it will dissolve completely into the white. I'm not fighting the white of the paper showing through. It's going to have a much, much less gritty, grainy feel than the rough or the cold press. The cold press, you're constantly going to be fighting that gritty, grainy feel with airbrush or with colored pencil. Even graphite, I wouldn't use it for that. Whereas the hot press works great for Inktense, whether it be the pencils or the blocks. It works great for graphite. It works great for airbrushing. It works great for colored pencil. For me and the mediums that I choose to work in, it's one of the best kind of all-around papers. And with the airbrush, it's not going to fight to get into all those little nooks and crannies. There aren't a lot of those, so I get a very smooth finish. Makes it much more easy to get that photorealistic look that I'm usually going for. Now for me personally, if I accidentally grabbed the wrong paper and got cold press, I would save it and use it with Inktense or with watercolor pencils if you ever play around with those, or with watercolor itself. It's not a bad paper. I just don't find it to be ideal for the techniques I use for airbrush or graphite, colored pencil, any of those. I have a frequently asked questions page over on my website. If you cannot find the answer to your question, there's a section where you can submit a question to be featured in one of these videos. I will have a card pop up here so you can check that out. Are you an artist? If so, and you have not already, you should definitely subscribe. There's a round button with an orange arrow down there. You can click that. It'll help you to keep up to date with all 5 of my new art videos every single week. I also have over 600 art videos here on YouTube that you can check out. There's a button right there you can click to get started.